This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
Well, Vasi, I think everything kind of starts with him. You know, he's been the backbone of this team for as long as I've been here and before that. And so when he gives our team that confidence, and it's not to say that he gives us a chance to forget about the D zone and forget about our chances against, but when he gives our team that confidence, I think it shows up in both ends of the ice, and he always looks big, but I think when he's on his game like he was tonight, he looks that much bigger.
The big cat looks big. Get it. Jeff Halpern from the other nights. Should be a fun game tonight. 7:30 start. Lightning and Oilers, and I'm bringing my partner, Dave Mishkin. He'll be calling the game tonight along with Phil Esposito. At Bolts Radio is where you can catch us on X, but not only is the opponent exciting, we have the return of a player who I think a lot of people are anxious to see, and maybe the line combinations partner are going to look a little different tonight.
Yeah, it's the second straight game where the Lightning have gotten some good news on the injury front, but also not great news on the injury front. So Nick Paul is going to make his season debut in game number 20, stemming from, we will call it, late off-season surgery, and they have him skating with Point and Gensel. So a lot of speculation. Would he center kind of sort of the third line? Would he be on a line with Cirelli and Hagel? Well, Kucherov played with Cirelli and Hagel in the last game, mostly with them, and did well, right? I mean, he scored a goal. Cirelli had an assist. So they're keeping that line intact, and they're going to start Nick Paul with Point and Gensel. But Hedman, who was kind of a surprise injury scratch, he played to the very end of the Lightning's game against Washington. What was that, about a week and a half ago? And then they just said he was day-to-day. And he hasn't played since. And John Cooper, who's back, by the way, which is good news, said that Hedman is on IR. He's going to be out a couple of weeks. So Lightning have managed without him, but they're going to have to manage without him for at least a couple more weeks, and no update really on McDonough either. So you're still looking at kind of plowing forward here with a busy schedule without, let's be honest, your top two left-handed defensemen, certainly, and maybe your top two defensemen. But, the Lightning have done pretty well in their absence so far. It will be a challenge tonight against two of certainly the best players in the NHL offensively, McDavid and Draisaitl, and the Oilers have, whether they have gotten off to a good start, a mezza start, a less than spectacular start in the eyes of management and their fan base, they are always a tough opponent because you have to worry about some very, very dynamic players on the other side, and a dynamic broadcaster too, because they have one of the most dynamic broadcasters in the NHL. Who's a great friend of the show, Jack Michaels, and he is joining us.
Yeah. Look at him.
Right on the top.
That would have been 20.
See, us people who live in Canada, we got to throw the sunglasses on no matter
I was
what
gonna
the
say,
conditions are.
Jack, every time you join us in Tampa, you're just like a man about town. There was last year you were like walking by, I don't even know where you were. You were walking by a bridge. Now you're in a car. I see the sun behind you. Yes, take advantage of the sun.
Yeah, and
it's definitely warmer than
Oiler media members here. We got Gino. We got the whole crew here. So
they can put you in
any number of opinions. We got it right here.
They can put you in your place if you don't answer it.
Restaurant.
Exactly. This is nothing.
So you're going to lunch, which is really the most important part of the day, I guess.
Well, sadly, I don't miss too many of those, as you well know.
Well, Jack, let's start with the schedule makers because we don't want to really pay too close attention to them. I will say, I don't know how often you've been on the receiving end of this. A fairly common back-to-back, I think, is one of the hardest back-to-backs in the NHL. That is at Vancouver, at Edmonton. Long distance from the rink to the airport. You're losing an hour.
It's
the
not
Oilers
like
have been
Dulles. It's not.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So I don't know why
to get out to Dulles was ridiculous. They had the president of Saudi Arabia in town. I don't know whether you realize that. There was a pileup at the airport at midnight or 12:30. So we staggered in. I think I turned on American Revolution on PBS at 3 a.m. to help put me to sleep. And sure enough, Peter Coyote did the job in about 20 minutes.
Well, I was going to say the league does this sometimes, and the Lightning have actually had this back-to-back where they play at home one night and go to Washington the next, or vice versa. But I was going to ask, obviously it was a difficult back-to-back.
Yeah, John Cooper said, he goes, boy, when I looked at the schedule, I was like, that's a brutal back-to-back. And he was kind of joking. He's like, if we lose this game, I'm going to wonder how in the world did we lose this game? So he knows it's a tough back-to-back. It is going to be a tough one for Edmonton. But I'll say this, guys, and I assume, kind of your listener and viewership is in the same boat. If you haven't been following Edmonton closely, I mean, 9-9-4 is probably the best record they could have right now. Everything's been a struggle. Nothing's been easy, whether it's a back-to-back or freshly rested, coming off, a brutal loss to Colorado. You'd think they'd be fired up after getting shellacked 9-1, and they were down 4-2 to Columbus with 6 minutes to go. I mean, this has been a tough year. Nothing's come easy. There hasn't been, I would say, a full 60-minute effort since game 2 of the regular season. That would be, let's say, the Edmonton or Tampa standard. So it's been tough sledding, and there's no easy way to dress up what you've seen the first 22 games from Edmonton. It is a team clearly struggling with motivation and resolve at this point in the year, because like a Tampa, like a Florida, they know there are far more important games ahead of them on their schedule. That's not an excuse, but it is a reason. And they're going to have to summon that resolve at some point here to give themselves a bit of a cushion, or they're going to be in kind of scramble mode and exert themselves far more than they want to get into the postseason tournament.
Dive deeper, Jack. Why has it been a struggle? Is there concern on your end? And a second part to that
Not
question.
Not really. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say Isaac Howard, obviously a lot of Lightning fans wanting to know how he's progressing. How has he kind of integrated himself within the team?
Well, I think Isaac Howard got caught in a situation where he had one guy ahead of him a little bit, Matt Savoy, who had played a full year in the American Hockey League and thrived in all situations at the professional level. And, no matter how good you are in college, it's still 2 games a week. And it's still the ability to come out flying out of the gates for every game, because you're storing it up for 3-4 practices during the week, and then it's pell-mell on the weekend. And, Isaac Howard is not a guy who's used to playing 8 minutes a night on the 3rd and 4th lines. He's used to getting involved in every facet of the game, getting a lot of touches early, and that just is not available on this type of hockey club. Not.
I know we're having some technical
Yeah, we'll
issues
try
there
and
with
reconnect.
Jack's connection there, and hopefully
Next time we should have him try and ride a unicycle and juggle while he's doing
how about maybe just go for a jog?
Yeah, maybe that too. Well, lunch is important. I didn't know that. So look, when the schedule makers set the schedule, they didn't know that the Saudi Arabian royalty was going to be in D.C. and leaving at the same time as the Edmonton Oilers.
Things right?
Although, oil in Saudi Arabia, it's kind of like peanut butter and jelly, isn't it?
It is.
Maybe he should have let them go first.
It is.
You're the Oilers.
Yeah.
You can punch the clock here and head to Tampa. 3 a.m. though is a pretty early arrival, particularly when you're not losing an hour, right? Like,
sure.
There's no time zone difference between Washington, D.C. and Tampa, obviously. Yeah. So, look, it's been a struggle for Edmonton. I'm not shocked to hear him say that, because this is not uncommon. He mentioned the Lightning in Florida. It's hard to go deep and then come back and spring right back at the beginning of the next year. It's hard to go deep twice and do it a third year, particularly when you've lost in the final 2 years in a row. Their schedule has not been easy. I mean, it sounds like they're not playing great at home or on the road, or at least to their standard. I mean, they lost to Colorado 9-1 at home, but this is their 15th road game already this year, Greg. So they have really been hammered with travel and a tough schedule, coming back after another deep run, short off season. I mean, they do seem reasonably healthy, and it doesn't seem like they have – I mean, their main guys have basically played every game. So it's not that, but sometimes it's like the mind wants, but the body is not really doing what it needs to do. And where they've really struggled is defensively. They have one of the worst goals against numbers in the NHL coming in. They're 29th. Now, you give up 9 in a game. You know, they gave up 7 last night. Like, you have a couple lopsided games where you're getting blown out or giving up a lot of goals. That'll affect your goals against. But this has been more than 1 or 2 games. I mean, if you're 29th in the NHL in team defense, it's a little bit more of a systemic problem than 1 or 2 games.
For sure. That's what we call a trend.
Yeah.
A trend that is a problem. And is that maybe the biggest question mark collectively that people have had with Edmonton since Connor McDavid's been there, is just, what are you going to get defensively year in and year out?
But it's not, I mean, look, it's not only, I mean, he doesn't have the worst minus on the team. Far from it.
Mangiapane has like a minus 16.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not necessarily. So, and look, the top guys, to the extent that you're going to say, what do we need to get from McDavid and Draisaitl? You need everything from them, right? And Bouchard. You need everything from them. But those 3 guys are producing points.
Yep.
McDavid leads the NHL in assists. Draisaitl's tied for the league lead in goals. Their power play's 3rd in the NHL. The Lightning have taken a lot of flack for their power play. Edmonton's power play has done its job. Bouchard is, I mean, he's not where Makar is in terms of points to start the year, but he's had a good offensive start to the season. The problem is that, you know, they're giving up 4 goals a game on average, basically. What are they at? 3.64.
Yeah.
So it's hard to outscore that many problems. So as Jack said, 9-9-4 is probably about as rosy a record as they might have. It sounds like they've had to pull some points out of their back pocket in games where maybe they shouldn't have gotten points.
I think we have Jack back, partner.
Okay.
Jack is back. Now he's at the table.
Restaurant.
He's at the table.
Is that the Columbia?
I don't know.
Where are you?
It still sounds a bit scratchy, but I'm on Wi-Fi. You got me all good.
Yeah, he sounds.
Yeah, you sound like I did a couple of days ago with a sore throat.
We may have to put you down, Jack. We may have to put you down, bud.
Enjoy your lunch, my friend. We'll see you tonight.
We'll do it again.
He tried. He gets A for effort.
Yeah.
He was willing to do the interview sitting at the table. I guess if you're part of the Canadian media, you have to be on call to do interviews whenever, wherever, however. Thank you, Jack, for trying.
We should have ordered lunch for him.
Yes.
I think.
Well, I hope he has a power lunch, because that was not a power Wi-Fi connection. That's for sure.
He's still backstage there, but I don't think we can get him on unless his connection comes up. Kaylee says, "Thank you, Dave and Greg, for doing this daily through the week. We appreciate this." You know, that's awesome. I feel like I'm starting to hear more and more of that, is that this is becoming part of a routine for a lot of Lightning fans, which is nice. You know, it's you make this part of your day. I mean, look, we all have that from time to time where, you know, it's a podcast or just something, you know, that you can kind of decompress from and just listen.
Yeah.
And I think that's good.
So let's circle back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show before Jack popped on and then popped off. So the Lightning have added a forward. They sent Sabrin back yesterday, as we talked about. So they could go 11-7 tonight, because it looks like Chernak is going to be in. If they want to keep the same decor that they had the other night in a good win, they could go 11-7. It looked like Finley was kind of the extra when they ran the lines, based on what was reported. Again, I'm on the tail end of this cold, knock on wood, but I decided to to do the show and do my game prep from home, so I wasn't at the skate this morning. But based on what was reported, Finley was the extra forward, and they had Douglas with James and Gonsalves, and just seeing that, like, that would be an unusual trio based on the fact that, you know, you had other guys that maybe Douglas has played with more, although he did have a game, I think, with James in James's debut, if I'm remembering right. But it's possible they could pull Douglas out as well. We had a fan ask, like, when Nick Paul comes back, who's going to be scratched? And I'm like, well, if you're going to look at how they did it before they started getting all these injuries, it would probably be Finley and Douglas. We may see that tonight. We may not. I'm not completely certain. What we do know is, though, that Nick Paul is back. Paul is versatile. Paul can play wing. Paul can play center. Paul can take faceoffs. Now, he's not a guy who's going to come in and win like 57% of his faceoffs, but, you know, he's been reliable, I would say, in the circle, and maybe he'll help in that regard. He is another lefty, so the Lightning have already a lot of lefties who can take faceoffs. But they're going to add Paul to the mix. That is a great sign and a big-time positive. Now, let's not go crazy here for him. I know it's an upper body injury, so he was able to keep himself in shape, but he hasn't played an actual game since the playoffs last year. So it may take him a little bit to kind of catch up in terms of a game speed. The Hedman injury does kind of change our thinking a little bit here. Because remember, we were talking about Radish, and like Radish is playing really well right now, but like, where is Radish's role going to be when the Lightning get healthy on defense? Well, if Hedman's going to be out a couple of weeks, I think that does open the door for sure that Darren Radish is going to be the defenseman on the top unit on the power play, and probably secures him into the lineup, you know, come hell or high water, basically. I mean, we don't know when McDonough is going to be back. The two guys that were just up from Syracuse, wouldn't be shocking when the Lightning get healthier to see one or both of them go back. But I think that this does add a little bit more roster security for Radish. And, you know, in addition to the fact that he's been playing well, but it also means that the Lightning are going to have to compensate for being without their captain. So I think we're going to try one more time.
One more time.
Yeah.
We've been called from the bullpen. Can we do it? Do we
have look at this.
I feel like this is stable. I was on Wi-Fi the second time I tried, but I think we're finally good here.
You sound great.
Yeah.
Okay,
are you in your hotel room?
Yeah, where
Did you leave the restaurant?
I left the restaurant, even though I was on Wi-Fi, and went upstairs, and I think we should be good to go.
Okay.
Look at this guy.
So you were at your hotel. So you guys were driving back to the hotel.
We were driving back to the hotel. I went down to pregame skate. I talked to Coop. We talked about the road trip, as I think we were right in the middle of when we got cut off. And, so, I mean, he's aware of the road trip, obviously. The Oilers most certainly will, you know, theoretically, though, have their legs going in the first and second periods. That's what I typically see out of a team, is that they actually sometimes have a little jump at the beginning of games on the second of a back-to-back, where, you know, potentially in this case, Tampa might take a while to get their legs underneath them. But the other thing that happens, I think, with this matchup, and I'm sure you've addressed it, is just exactly, you know, the matchup. Like, you can't tell me Kucherov doesn't get his ears perked up when McDavid and Draisaitl is in town, and vice versa. I mean, this is a matchup that the top players are checking one another out. I don't think it's a coincidence that Kucherov's best numbers of his career, which are pretty damn good numbers across the board, are against Edmonton. And, you know, likewise, I think the Oilers enjoy the matchup, even though they don't typically enjoy going down to Tampa, because they've won exactly once in the last 17 years, I believe.
I didn't realize it was that stark, but
they've lost 10 of 11, and they've been outscored 45-24 in your building. So it's pretty dramatic, which, by the way, I mean, it's one thing. Like, I actually prefer a building to change multiple times. You know, like, in other words, you get used to it. When a place like the one in LA and the one in Tampa changes, I'm going to be checking my book like 5 times tonight to make sure I say Benchmark International Arena.
Well, it's right there at center ice. You can just look at the ice and.
Oh, all right. Well, I haven't seen. I somehow in watching Tampa's pregame skate, I missed that. But we'll hopefully be a little bit more observant tonight when I actually have to call the game.
Well, let me ask you this, Jack. Going back to last year, and this may be old news, but we haven't had you on since you joined us before the final, and you were rosy about Edmonton's chances, in part because they had home ice. And, it was a 2-2 series after 4 games. With the benefit of some distance and hindsight, like, give us your postmortem on what happened in that series and why the Oilers didn't kind of fulfill what you had thought they might fulfill and win the series.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I think the biggest reason I was somewhat rosy is that the Oilers had no business being tied 2-2. They were down 3-0 and dead to rights in Game 4, and I really thought that was a potential swing game, much the way Game 4 was a swing game in the first round of the LA series. They had no business getting out of that round. I think I might have said, on your show that Jim Hiller propelled the Oilers into the second round as much as anyone last year, with a curious decision to challenge and some strange deployment of defensemen during the course of that first round series against Edmonton. But when Draisaitl banked one in off of, I think it was Nico Mikkola, to even that series, and Florida had been up 3-0 in that game, I going back home at a best of 3 in Edmonton, I was thinking, good luck. I mean, you're going to have a hard time. And what Florida did was exploit 2 major advantages they had going into the series. Is number one, the Oilers didn't have a driver in Zach Hyman that might have been able to negate Tampa's positive start, either with his own play or getting his teammates to play early in that game, because Florida arrived in Game 5 on a mission, and that was to completely eradicate what materialized in Game 4, and the Oilers didn't match the energy, didn't match the resolve. And then the other thing that happened is Florida took advantage of what they had all year long, and starting at the deadline, and that is the best third line in hockey, and it wasn't even close. And the line of Marchand, Lundell, and Lou Osterinen absolutely took the Oilers to the woodshed, as they did every team they played. So that's what happened. The better team established itself as the better team in Game 5, instead of allowing the momentum from a potentially shocking and energy sapping loss in Game 4. They didn't let it become a turning point in the series, not at all. And they closed it out as they did, the previous year, with a suffocating win in Game 6 back on home ice. So that's the postmortem. Now, getting back to Greg's question before we were cut off, and in other words, the deeper dive. I don't know whether you have to dive too deeply. I think it is right now more here than anything else for the Oilers, X's and O's wise, in terms of why they're struggling, at the outset. The second part of your question was Isaac Howard and where he fits into the mix. And I think that Isaac Howard right now is getting what Matt Savoy got last year, and that's some American Hockey League experience, playing against men, playing 20 minutes a night, playing in all situations, getting the toolkit established at the professional level. It is different no matter how good you've been in college. And I think Isaac Howard, and really Stan Bowman said it all year long, for the first time in a while, first time in 3 years, the Oilers aren't necessarily the oldest team in the league. They haven't already ceilinged out, and will it be good enough? In other words, Edmonton knew what it had the previous 2 Decembers and Januaries, and would it be enough to win a Stanley Cup? Right now, the Oilers are one team. Stan Bowman is counting on them being another team in March or April, with some of the youth that he's integrated into this lineup and some of the additions, where some of these pieces may fall. Time will tell whether, there's a jump from Howard and Savoy, maybe David Tomashik, who scored his second NHL goal last night in Washington. Can these 3 players who've never previously played at the NHL level, can they inject Edmonton with something they haven't had down the stretch, which is a real infusion of fresh legs. And that's what really, Edmonton has seen depart this team. Fogle and Holloway and McLeod, those are guys that were supposed to mitigate McDavid and Draisaitl playing 23 minutes a night. What's happened early in the season is the Oilers' subpar play has forced the coaching staff's hand at times to play those guys 22, 23 minutes a night, where they really should have no business playing those kind of minutes in games that ultimately shouldn't mean that much in mid-November.
Jack, regardless if those young players are able to come up and give them a spark or not, do you think this is a team that will be somewhat active for veteran-type players at the forward position come the trade deadline to potentially bump them, get them over the hump? And what was the reaction to McDavid's 2-year extension beginning next year? How was that received? How do you think it really plays out for him and where this Edmonton team goes?
Well, Edmonton's on the clock. I think what Connor McDavid, decided is let's give the Oilers a shorter window. In addition to the fact that we don't know where that cap's going to go in the next couple of years. This may also turn out to be a shrewd move financially. And who knows whether in a couple of years Draisaitl's $14.5 million contract and Kaprizov's $17 million deal, they might be somewhat archaic. Maybe a top guy is going to get $20 million in a couple of years, and it could be a win-win for McDavid in terms of giving Edmonton a sense of urgency to get something done in terms of a championship in the next couple of years, and at the same time be able to sign a $20 million deal in a few years. So I think that's how it was received is, hey, the Oilers are on the clock here to find a way to make sure they extend that championship window as long as possible for Connor McDavid. And I think that's what Connor McDavid is most interested in at this point. And it's the same thing that Leon Draisaitl and Zach Hyman and all these other guys that have been the core of this team. They don't have what Kucherov and Point have. They don't have that. That's the one thing they're missing. They arguably have more individual awards than all those guys, but they don't have, what Vasilevsky has. They don't have the rings on their fingers. So they're looking for as many cracks at it as necessary. And remember, it wasn't too long ago that Tampa was in Edmonton's identical spot, close in 15. A couple of conference finals losses in Game 7. The shocker at the hands of Columbus. The year where everything went wrong and they still almost made the playoffs and missed it by a point. There were a lot of near misses in Tampa. So this is not, and for that matter, Tampa was, kind of the middle of a long line of teams that finally got it done. Colorado, Vegas finally got it done. St. Louis, Washington before Tampa finally got it done. You could even make an argument that Pittsburgh's repeat as champions came after a long list of first and second round losses in the years leading up to those cups. So you need as many kicks at the can as you can. And Tampa's a perfect example of that. And that's what Connor McDavid wants to see in the next couple of years. And I think that in conjunction with the fact that the agent is wise and understands where the cap may be in a couple of years, I think that accounts for the shorter, yet still it's kind of a toe in, toe out commitment window that McDavid's established here.
Last one for me, Jack. The goaltending situation always seems to be a topic in Edmonton, and it was very interesting last year because Calvin Pickard played so well through the regular season and got significant time in the playoffs, both in that first round and in the second round and then in the final. What's that dynamic? Like, how's the split going to be, assuming they can figure out their defensive problems? Do you think Pickard will have a chance to win 20 games again this year, or is it Skinner's net?
Well, I think it should be Skinner's net. I don't know whether, right now Calvin Pickard hasn't played well enough to start taking starts from Stuart Skinner. Stuart Skinner's numbers are not all world. In fact, he might have been the starter tonight had Washington scored a fourth goal in the first period, as it first appeared they might. Milano banged one off the post with 3 already having gone in on Skinner. then he settled down and played fairly well. But you're right. At times, the defensive play hasn't been good enough in front of either goaltender. This is a big start for Calvin Pickard because even though he hasn't played well in the American Hockey League to date, the Oilers did pick up a goalie with, NHL experience and recent NHL success in Connor Ingram to push their goaltending duo a little bit. And if this continues, in other words, if Skinner at 881 and Pickard in the mid 800s continues, there'll be a move at the deadline, and it won't necessarily be a move for a forward. I'm just reading the tea leaves here. I mean, Edmonton can't continue with this goaltending much longer. Now, having said that, the goaltending is not the primary issue here. You saw the first period last night against Washington, even against the low-scoring club. The Capitals were gifted 7 or 8 tremendous chances, and they got 3, and they could have had more. I thought Skinner actually played very well through the middle portion of that game, but still, you're losing the game where you score 4. That's not a recipe for any kind of long-term success. And the Lightning figured that out in the first 2 weeks of this season. And they figured that out at times, over the course of this run that they've had in the last 10 years, that ultimately, while they are high octane, their best success comes when they're able to clamp down defensively. So that's where the Oilers are at right now in terms of the goaltending. I think this is a bit of a trial the next 3 or 4 months. It has to improve. Something's got to give if it doesn't. In my opinion, there'll be a change if the goaltending doesn't improve. So, it's time will tell. I think Calvin Pickard gets the start tonight. I think the coaching staff is well aware of the defensive liabilities, and I would tell you that the goaltending has not been as poor as the numbers would suggest. Having said that, it does need to improve. It's an area of improvement on this team, just like everything else is. This is an Edmonton club that has yet to find its game, that is really outside of game 2, yet to really put a full game together. And I think, again, going back to what I said earlier, most of that has very little to do with X's and O's. Most of it is, their main board, much like our connection at the start of this interview, is a little fried right now. They've got to find a way to get emotionally engaged in a lot of these games between games 20 and 60 so that they'll be set up for the stretch drive, because otherwise you get yourself into some bad habits.
Jack, lastly, what do you make of the Western Conference in general through 20 plus games? Some pretenders in your eyes, or some teams that are starting to look pretty good that maybe we didn't have ticketed for one of the top 8 spots?
Here's what I would say. I think outside of Colorado, the whole league has done this. I mean, I just see the mushy middle as ever expanding. This is a Gary Bettman, Roger Goodell, Adam Silver, Rob Manfred dream. This is parity. This is 8 or 9 teams clustered within 2 points all over the place. Whether you talk the Eastern Conference, at one point, I believe all 16 teams were within 5 points of one another. I mean, this is what the commissioners want. The long time good hockey clubs have slowly drifted back, and I'm including Edmonton and Tampa in that regard. And teams like Anaheim and Utah out west and out east, Detroit and Jersey and, the Islanders have kind of slowly crept back from irrelevance. And as a result, you've got a bunch of decent teams, but outside of Colorado, no one looks like they could theoretically, run away with it and secure, a number 1 seed with 20 games to go. I see the middle as ever expanding, much like my own.
That's a good one. Well, Jack, we appreciate.
Well, you skipped lunch, so I don't know if that's going to help. Or...
Are you kidding? I'm waiting to go to lunch. Trust me. I just got to knock on the door. That's the signal that, hey, Jack, we've waited.
Let's get going.
Yeah.
It's time, but we always
sorry about all
that.
the technical issues, guys. I hope I gave you a half decent contact. You certainly, as you talked about, you got to applaud the effort on short rest.
Yes, absolutely.
Here.
A for
all right,
effort.
sir. Stick tap all the way around.
Thanks, Jack.
All right, Jack. Appreciate it. I think, is Jack our best guest?
Yeah, he brings a lot of flavor.
He does.
I'm using the lunch analogy again here. But I'm impressed that he went to go hear Coop after rolling in at 3 a.m. because I'm sure the Oilers didn't have to show up at the rink for the morning. They will show up for the rink later. 7:30 start.
He's
ESPN Plus.
He's a rink rat. He just likes to be around, right?
Yeah.
He just likes to be around. And
he does.
I think he likes talking to Coop when he can, so all of that is good. But, boy, I mean, it sounds like Edmonton's got some problems.
Well, look, nothing that he said is shocking to me. We saw it especially in 2015-16 with the Lightning. Now, that was a little different for the Lightning than what the Oilers are going through because the Lightning, that was kind of the first kick at the can to get to the final in 2015. So it was a new experience coming back with the short offseason, and they did not start well. I know you remember that season, Greg. Well, I think that was your first season with us on Lightning Radio, and at the halfway point of the season, it was a little iffy if the Lightning were going to get into the playoffs. They had a good second half. But it took some time to, like, what did he call it? The main board was fried. Right. Like, I think it wasn't physical. It was investment. It was mental, but it was also like, what are you investing in these games where you have a target on your back because you're the Eastern Conference champ? The Lightning in October and November into December needed to figure out how to raise that level. And I've used this analogy before. Like when you get to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, it's hard to get up for Game 7 in the regular season a few months later. So what's a little different is that, like, the Oilers are not – this is not their first kick at the can at this. Like, they've had deep playoff runs even before the last 2 years. They have come back after shorter than usual off seasons before. Now they have started slowly in some years and made some coaching changes. We've seen that and then gotten hot. But – it does seem like it's wearing on them, according to Jack, this year. And some of their game scores have been ugly with a capital U. And it's hard to hide from that, you know. So hopefully the Lightning can extend their pain for one more game and finish their first or their second 10-game segment getting back to playoff pace because they have the chance to do that with a win tonight.
And if people were just joining us, by the way, Nick Paul is returning to the lineup, which is very exciting news, you know, from that perspective. But Hetty will be out for
couple of weeks.
A couple weeks.
Yeah. So he's on IR. So the Lightning have some guys on IR. 3 defensemen on IR.
Yeah.
McDonough, Crozier, and Hedman.
Let's get to some questions before we do that. Tonight, enjoy some Refrum. Smooth, versatile, and now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Refrum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Refrum by name. Go Bolts. Enjoy responsibly. One thing to keep an eye on, I think, while Hetty is out. What does the play of Darren Radish look like? Because... one, with all of these injuries, he's going to be in the lineup. But 2, power play. He's that guy back there. And you shouldn't be looking over your shoulder. Hey, am I coming out? I mean, I guess you could always say that. But he theoretically would be the guy on that first power play unit bombing away. Mm-hmm. And coming off the game he had, I'd be curious to see if this is a decent stretch for him.
Confidence,
right?
That's
I mean,
what we
like,
talked about in a negative way, where the Lightning were missing confidence.
You're not
now
looking
the power
over.
play hopefully has gotten some confidence in that too for Radish. Yeah,
you're looking like the guy. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. Brendan says, "I'd love some Power Lunch merch."
So would we.
Any thoughts on T-shirts or stickers? Could donate the proceeds to a local organization.
That's a great idea.
I actually love that idea.
We need to get our Cracker Jack staff on that.
Jared, come on. Let's get it going. Lucas says, is it a coincidence the power play looks much more dangerous and teams are backing up more now that Bjorky is looking to shoot more? His first thought needs to be shoot first, pass later.
So it's not like he was looking to shoot every time the puck came to him. But I do agree that he's looking to shoot more. I think the power play improved last game for a couple of reasons. First of all, they moved the puck more quickly. And second of all, they had it in the offensive zone. And they started to see some good things happen, even before Gensel scored his 2 goals. But to say that Bjorkstrand not shooting, or Bjorkstrand looking to shoot, like that helps too, for sure.
And I want to be fair. Not that we are. We're praising a guy for doing what he should be doing, which is shoot the puck.
Yeah.
If you're doing anything different on the power play other than shoot, we need to get you off. Because you got acquired because you can fill the net. So shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot your way out of the slump. Don't pass.
Well, I think he's trying to do that.
Shoot your way out of the slump.
5-on-5 as well.
But I just don't want, and this is just part of it too. We're looking for positives. And he's shooting the puck. Yeah, but that's what he does.
Right.
That's what he does. Shoot the puck. And hopefully it goes in. Chris says we love Mish, Greg, and Jack. Ooh.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
I'm glad Jack got it. He went way above and beyond. If it were me, I would have been like, well,
Yeah.
the connection's not great. I'm getting some lunch. He's like, I'm going to the room because I want to be part of Power Lunch.
It's just, we might need to make a promo of that.
Yes.
Chris also says Oilers must be exhausted.
Look, there are some
we'll find out.
schedule segments that are very tough, and they are on a long, long road trip. I mean, what is this? I think that they're in maybe a 7-game road trip. I should look it up, and this is the second to last game. They finish up against the Panthers in 2 nights. I will actually look that up. I know later this year they have an 8-game homestand. The Lightning are not visiting them during that 8-game homestand. All right, so the trip started on November 12th.
Yeah.
That's 8 days ago. They played the 12th and the 13th. Mm-hmm. They played the 15th, the 17th, and the 19th. So they've played 5 games so far on the trip. They got 2 left. So it's a long trip, but it's also a condensed trip. So you're playing 7 games from November 12th to November 22nd. That's 11 days. And then you had a travel day to get to the first destination, Philly. Yeah. That is a tough trip.
It's a tough trip. Agreed.
The other part about Edmonton's game by game as I'm looking at it, so they have 9 wins. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those wins in overtime. And they've all been in overtime. Their wins have not been in the shootout. They've ended up losing 2 games in a shootout. So they are like a lot of teams. They've had a lot of overtime games. But for the Edmonton Oilers, 22 games into the season, they only have 4 wins in regulation. So when they've won, I mean, we talk about the importance of getting points. So 9, 9, and 4. They only have 9 regulation losses. So they're at hockey 500. But for them to only have 4 wins before overtime tells you, like, this is just not, like, the train is not rumbling down the tracks for them.
No, it's not working well. Mythos says Oilers definitely in a tough spot right now because not only is goaltending not there, but the defense is lacking. He also says even McDavid not shining like he should.
Well, he is leading the NHL in assists. Now, should he be doing more? Should he be a plus player? I mean, that's not for me to say. I have a feeling that he probably has contributed on some of those overtime victories. He's -5. He's got 32 points in 22 games, McDavid. So it's not like he has 42 points in 22 games, but 32 points in 22 games is pretty good. The problem is, though, as Jack just said, if
Ryan
you score
Nugent-Hopkins.
4, he's out. I mean, he's injured.
But
But if you score, what's his minus at?
I think it was like it's a -7, 5.
Is that where he is? Yeah, Mangiapane is at -16. That's tough. And
that
Kulak,
is
one of the
atrocious.
defensemen, -11. But, as Jack just said, if you score 4 in a game, that should be enough to win.
Yeah.
They scored 4 and lost by 3. Now, I think there were a couple of empty netters in there. But still, they scored 4 and they gave up 5 with the goalie in the net. Not a formula for success. And it's really been, and like these are all of my key pressure points. Like everything that Edmonton is doing, if I were doing the Oilers, like my head would be ready to explode because they're not doing the things that you need to be able to do to have success. They are not defending. and they are not defending 5-on-5. They are horrendous 5-on-5 because their penalty kill is actually okay. It's tied for 11th. They're at 81.8%. Their 5-on-5 differential, I'm going to give it to you right now. 5-on-5. They've scored 40 goals. They've allowed 58 goals. They are minus 18 5-on-5. And that's excluding any empty netters or 5-on. This is a separate category. This is 5-on-5 with each team with a goalie in the net. They are minus 18. Like, those numbers just have to change. I mean, Jack's right, and they're going to, like, they're in it, right? They're not where Calgary is, the bottom of the conference in the standings race, but like, these metrics are like red flags going up everywhere, when you see stuff like this. Now, they have the talent, so maybe you can kind of continue to survive. I think they're surviving, continue to survive for a while if Draisaitl and McDavid and Bouchard continue to produce. But the fan was like, McDavid's not, like, thank God for McDavid if you're an Oilers fan. Thank God for Draisaitl, because if they weren't doing what they were doing, you wouldn't be 9-9-4.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they won 5 overtime games. I'm gonna look and see who's scored for them in overtime while you
I asked
talk.
Jack that question about being active at the trade deadline with certain players maybe they would acquire. Did you see Blake Coleman's name being thrown around?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Calgary.
Well, Calgary has had a horrible start, so
a lot of teams eyeing him potentially, and of course we know what he can do. You want me to go to some questions while you?
Yeah, so Draisaitl has 1 overtime goal. Jack Roslovic, who came to them from Carolina last year, he has 2 overtime goals, and 2 have come from defensemen.
Yeah.
Bouchard, who's an offensive defenseman, got 1, and Jake Wallman got the other. But, I mean, you don't know. I'm just looking at who scored the goal. I didn't see who was on the ice, so.
Alan says, glad Coach Coop is back. Thank you, Coach Halpern, for holding down the fort. I'm excited about Paul's return and possibly playing with Point and Kucherov. Excited about tonight.
I don't know that Nick Paul has played a lot. It's Point and Gensel, by the way. But I don't know if Paul has played a lot with Point, actually. Yeah. And I don't think he's really played a lot with Point and Gensel.
Where is James in these line rushes again?
So James was on a line with Douglas and Gonsalves, which is why I was wondering if it's possible Douglas would be scratched tonight, but maybe not. We'll see.
Interesting.
The other part was that when they ran the D, at least how it was listed by the people on scene, when they wrote the D pair, Lilleberg was the 7th defenseman. Lilleberg is not coming out of the lineup.
Mm-mm.
I hope we're all in agreement on that after we had some pushback on the notion that he was in earlier in the year. So if Lilleberg is in and he was kind of taking a rotation as kind of the 7th defenseman, that to me means the Lightning are dressing 7 defensemen. Chernak was in the mix, playing with Destu. So you had Radish, Moser, Chernak, Destu, and then the 2 guys who played together against the Devils, Carlisle and Santini, and then Lilleberg. We'll see.
We will see. Let's see. Alan also says, Dave, regarding cross-country trips, is it easier for a team going east to west, or is it easier west to east? Or is it in your head?
Well, you're asking to have me give an opinion on what's harder for a player. I have no idea. I can tell you that I find that it's easier to stay up than get up. So generally coming east is a little harder of an adjustment, but I'm in my mid-50s and I'm not 23 anymore, and maybe they don't care, right? They can just bounce right back, on little sleep. It is an adjustment when you're used to playing at 7 o'clock and it feels like 10 o'clock. I think that I've heard that. It's less of an adjustment if you're used to playing at 7 o'clock and it feels like 4 o'clock, which is what it is if, San Jose comes east, right? And they play 7 o'clock Eastern start time. I don't know. Travel stuff. I mean, that Vancouver-Edmonton back-to-back, to me, I think that is, of regular back-to-backs that we see, that is one of the hardest back-to-backs for East or West, but especially for the Eastern teams that are changing lots of time zones just to get out west, because it's not quite like Dulles, but it's pretty far to get to the airport in both. I mean, like, if you're going from Edmonton to Vancouver, you're gaining an hour. So that's a little different. It's in the other direction. And the Lightning had one of those. It wasn't last year, but it might have been the year before. And I mean, I don't know. It wasn't 3 a.m. Edmonton time, but it was close by the time you're rolling in. Then if you have weather, which is possible, you may have to de-ice. You're sitting on the tarmac for a while. It's a tough back-to-back. So Edmonton gets the benefit of teams that have that back-to-back where they're coming to Edmonton for the second game. But usually what comes around goes around. And Edmonton is they're paying the piper on this trip for sure. I remember one game so the Lightning had clinched a playoff spot. I want to say this was their cup defense year in 05-06 because we missed 04-05 due to the lockout. So the Lightning did not have, they didn't vault to the top of the standings in 05-06. They did make the playoffs, but they entered as the 8th seed. So in those days, you had 3 divisions in each conference. The division winner got a top 3 seed. So it was 1, 2, 3. 4 through 8 was just basically like the wild card. It was the next 5 top teams. So the Lightning were not going to win their division. That was the year Carolina actually won the Stanley Cup, and Carolina was in the Lightning's division. So the Lightning were home for game 82. And I think if they won the game, they would have finished not 8th. They would have finished 7th, maybe 6th. Their opponent was Washington. Washington played at home the night before. So it was the Capitals who had this back-to-back. They played at home, got in an airplane, flew to Tampa to play the Lightning the next night. The Capitals were going to miss the playoffs that year. That was before it was actually Ovechkin's rookie year, but they missed the playoffs. They missed the playoffs. They got Nicholas Backstrom in that draft. They picked 4th overall. So they were a bottom-feeding team. Halpern was on that team. He was the captain.
Yeah.
And they came in and they beat the Lightning in game 82. And the Lightning, as a result, got the 8th seed. They had to play Ottawa in the first round, which didn't win the Stanley Cup, but Ottawa was a terrific team, and Ottawa just, dismissed the Lightning in 5 games. Would it have made a difference if they won that game, finished with a higher seed? Who knows? Yeah. The history is history, right? That ship has sailed long ago, but just because a team has that long back-to-back doesn't mean that they aren't going to compete and try and win. So the Lightning need to be ready tonight. And when you have McDavid and Draisaitl, they can, I don't care how tired they are. Sure. If you give them a power play, they can make you pay, for sure.
I think there are things coaches can try to do to limit the expected dip when you're doing those type of traveling situations, knowing especially that first game, whether it's keeping the lines.
You're talking about for the team that did the traveling.
That did the travel, yeah. More or less keeping the line changes short, ice time at a minimum. You may even try and do some mixing and matching to try and spark things a little bit more if you feel like guys don't have their legs. There are certain, but we have also seen things too where, and it's like this in any sport, but particularly one that is a long season, the scheduled loss. I mean, how many times have we talked about that a little bit with Arizona back in the day? And it felt like, boy, this one was just a bad, giving up 7 goals to a team that's in last place at the time, and it might have just been they didn't have anything in the tank.
Yeah.
That can happen. That is part of the process. Rob says, 100% part of my daily routine here at work makes chopping 30 pounds of onions and 50 pounds of potatoes that much pleasant. Greetings from Indianapolis, fellas. I love that.
Wow, we're going nationwide here.
Sky
we
clouds.
Had a fan
How
from
about
the
this
West,
one?
We had a fan from the West Coast.
How about this one? It's 5 p.m. where I am, and this is part of my commute home. Love it, guys. I love that.
I like to hear the people who are actually working while they are listening. Because, look, if you can't get your eyes, I guess you could have your eyes on a screen. I hope you're not looking at a screen while you're chopping onions, whoever that fan was from Indianapolis.
Yes.
I hope you're focused on chopping onions. But this is one of the mediums where you can actually be engaged in doing something else like work and consuming the product, essentially.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I do that the rare times I'm out, or if I'm at my desk doing a little work and I have a chance where nobody's going to interrupt me and I want to have a podcast on that's not listening to one of our shows on Power Lunch, it's a nice way to just kind of get lost into work, but also listening as well. Jim emails his partner from Jacksonville. He says, besides missing a game or two here and there, isn't this Victor Hedman's first extended time off during his career? Very durable. I thought prior to this injury, he didn't seem himself on the ice earlier this season. Your thoughts?
Well, we have said we felt Hetty was up and down this year. He has had injuries, Jim. And we don't know how extended this is going to be. He has missed to this point 4 games, which I wouldn't say is an excessive amount. Now, a couple weeks, could this number reach? I mean, it'll probably reach double digits if we're looking at 2 weeks, I would guess. Is he going to miss 20 games? I mean, that would be significant. He's had injuries, though. And maybe those injuries have been just a little bit here and a little bit there, but they haven't just been like tweaks, you know. He got hurt at the end of the 62-win season. We talked about that, which was near the end of the regular season, but he missed 2 games in the playoffs and wasn't himself. I mean, there was one year he got hurt, I think right before the All-Star break. There was a home game against Calgary. It was Hathaway was with the Flames, checked him. I think he tweaked something.
Steve said
he missed 12 games
19,
in 18-19. Some, but those were split up because I know he missed some near the end of the year. 14-15, he missed 13. He got hurt right at the beginning of that year. It may have been blocked a shot and had something happen to his hand or wrist. But, I mean, Jim's point is a fair one. This is not going to be like a Stamkos. I mean, it doesn't seem – they wouldn't have said a couple of weeks if it was going to be like a Stamkos injury where, you know he's going to miss 50 games or whatever. Significant time. So they'll just have to make do in his absence and try and do the best they can. And it also seems like maybe there was a chance that he could have tried to push through it, and they're being cautious with it. That was kind of the verbiage that we saw. So
I will say this, and we can end the show with this. If they are being cautious with him, I am okay with that because I agree with Jim, and we have talked about this a number of times. I don't think Hetty's gotten off to the start that he's wanted. I think that's fair. And, and a lot of times when people slump a little bit, people always will ask us, speculate, are they injured?
Yeah.
And we just took that question.
We've gotten that question about Point, and I don't think he is injured.
No. But
clearly Hedman's been dealing with something.
And so if that's the case, then maybe we have to look at that and say, okay, well, then maybe there was a reason why he wasn't where he needed to be. And guys play through things all the time, so that's not uncommon. But obviously it got to the point, partner, where it was like, okay, yeah, you probably do need to sit.
Yeah.
You need to sit. And would you rather have it now or towards the end of the year?
And, this is also a statement about the Lightning's depth on D. I don't think one is following the other. I mean, if the decision was to have Victor kind of shut it down and get healthy, really healthy, I think that would have been the decision. But it makes the decision a little easier knowing that you have this depth that has really given the Lightning a huge boost, both at the forward and the defense position.
Chief thinks the depth on the back end is the best throughout the organization.
Yeah.
That's saying something considering we think the forward position also has some serious depth.
Well, the defense will be put to the test tonight.
Yeah.
Anytime you're seeing the Oilers, you know that your defense is going to be put to the test.
Do you think Moser gets the assignment potentially on McDavid? Again, pick your poison. When they're not loading up on Draisaitl and McDavid. I mean,
maybe, I don't know if Chernak and Destu, they kind of were using them in that role, but they had a tough game against the Rangers, and they were seeing a lot of the top guys against the Rangers.
I'd give it to Moser. I think Moser's been pretty consistent this year, and I'd say that's the assignment tonight. And you would think Cirelli's going against McDavid. That's just a hunch.
Right, but sometimes, I mean, that's the beauty for the Oilers coach, whoever the coach was and is. I mean, it's Chris Knobloch, but I mean, they've had other coaches with McDavid and Draisaitl, and they've done the same. You can put them on the same line, or you can put them on separate lines. If they're on separate lines, you got to worry about matching against 2 lines. Also, Hyman's return, I mean, it didn't help them in their last game. Hyman is a big part of that team.
He's a good player.
Yeah, he got injured in the conference final and hurt his wrist. I mean, hurt his wrist makes it seem like, it got bent a little bit. Like it was a serious injury.
Right.
And he missed the rest of the playoffs, whole off season, and the first, whatever it was, 20 games this year.
Yeah, that's an injury.
Yeah, that's
Right.
an injury.
Yeah,
so, I mean, it was kind of like Nick Paul, had to miss some time after. I think Hyman's was worse, because I think he got his procedure done either in the playoffs or early in the offseason. Paul, it seemed like they waited a little bit. They wanted to try and rehab it, and then they decided to do the surgery. But him being back and him being healthy will help them. He's a guy who scored 50 goals before. But he's just a solid all-around player. Like, he can score, but he can also defend, plays very hard. He will help them.
Yeah.
There is no doubt. But again, he's just a few games in. They've been playing him a lot, too. He's up over 20 minutes a game. It's small sample size. He's played just 3 games since coming back. But, how long will it take him to kind of really get into the flow of things? We'll see.
Nationally televised game. We've had a couple
Yes.
people ask that. 7:30.
ESPN Plus.
Yep. So,
But we're steady Eddie. We're always where we are.
we don't
right?
deviate too much, do we?
We don't deviate, no.
We will be on the airwaves at 7:00, and then I will talk to you and Phil closer to the puck dropping during
and we
the
have a
pregame.
departure day tomorrow for DC, so we will be doing our show in the morning.
We will be taping
tomorrow.
What time do we want to tape? 9? Is that good? Earlier than that?
that works.
Whatever
Works
works.
for
For me. I
me.
want you to make sure you get to the airport, okay, partner?
Yeah.
Can't,
Well, we're not leaving at 9.
Yeah, we're not. Well, make sure though. You never know. Traffic. I don't want to prolong it too much, but we will be taping the show tomorrow. If you want to get your questions in, you can start doing it now for tomorrow, or obviously after the game. And we hope you listen to everything at Bolts Radio. And thanks to Jack.
Yeah, thanks to Jack Michaels.
Today. He was great. All right, partner. I will catch you at the rink in a few hours.
See you in a few.
Thanks to Steve Ersnick and Jarrett Johnston. We always appreciate those guys. For Jack Michaels, I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.